People are waking up to news of 3 bloody incidents from around the world overnight. The Russian ambassador to Turkey has been killed. He was shot in the back while giving a speech in Ankara. The gunman is said to be an off-duty police officer. And over in Germany, a truck plowed into a crowded Christmas market in Berlin, killing at least 12 people and injuring many more. And then in Switzerland, a man stormed into a Zurich mosque and opened fire. 3 people are injured.
At least 3 people were injured in a shooting at a mosque in Zurich. Emergency services gathered at the scene in Switzerland's largest city. The suspect is on the run after the shooting near the main train station. Police say the mosque was frequented by Somali immigrants. It is still unclear whether the mosque or any of the other businesses were the target of this attack.
It appears that an incident at a German Christmas market was no accident. It's being reported that the semi-truck crash in Berlin that has claimed at least 1 fatality is now being called a deliberate attack. According to BBC News, police say they suspect it was a deliberate attack. Video footage from the scene shows stalls knocked over and people lying injured on the ground. According to website Red State, there are reportedly multiple injuries from the crowd of holiday shoppers, in addition to the 1 known fatality.
Of the news breaking in Europe, this is Berlin where you are looking live, and this is a large truck. If you looked at, you can see the windshield is shattered above the rescue worker's head there. That truck, and you see the Christmas tree in the foreground with the star on top. That truck, about an hour and 25 minutes ago, according to local authorities, veered off a 2-lane divided street in front of Kaiser Wilhelm Church on the west side of Berlin in the Charlottenburg district at about 8 o'clock local time, crashed into a large crowd, more than 100 people on site at the time, in that very location on the map, killed 9 people and wounded dozens more. From the Wall Street Journal, the truck drove onto the sidewalk. 50 are now injured. A spokesman for the Berlin police say it happened at 8 o'clock local time when that semi-trailer truck, or as they call it there, a lorry, drove onto the sidewalk near this plaza. After hitting the people, the truck then swerved back into the street, and when it got back into the street, it came to a stop. The holiday market was set up in front of the Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church, which is a very popular site for tourists in the fashionable district. Earlier this month, Germany narrowly avoided a suspected Islamist attack on a Christmas market in the city of Ludwigshafen. Authorities reported then that a 12-year-old German Iraqi boy twice planted an explosive device at a Christmas market there. It failed to detonate. Tonight's attack has come on the heels of a warning from the State Department to all Americans to avoid crowded markets and places of high concentration of people during the holiday period while traveling in large cities across Europe. Let's go to the scene now. Alan Hall is a GRN reporter of Global Radio News. He is in Berlin for us this evening. Alan, what are you learning there?
Yes, as you say, it's a terrorist attack. There's 50 injured, 9 dead now confirmed by the police. The lorry, as you say, veered from the Budapester Straße onto the pedestrian area outside the Kaiser Wilhelm Memorial Church. This is a church that was destroyed by Allied bombing in World War II and left as a landmark in the middle of West Berlin. It is the richest, classiest shopping area of West Berlin, and every year a Christmas market with stalls are set up selling candy, sausages, mulled wine. Many tourists there. There could probably be many or some foreigners among the dead and injured. This Scania semi, as you call it, the articulated lorry, mounted the pavement, ploughed into the people. All we're seeing at the moment is on the social media networks are screens of injured people, a miasma of blue lights as the authorities try to clear up the mess. The lorry driver apparently is on the run. There's a manhunt across Berlin to try to find him.
Alan Hall from Global Radio News live on scene, and that manhunt confirmed first to us by the Bild newspaper there on scene, and now we're getting that report from multiple news organizations, and alas, I have just seen from authorities as well. The person who was driving this vehicle at last report was on the run and unaccounted for. German intelligence have been intercepting indications of a possible attack on a Christmas market in Berlin for several days. That's according to the Welt newspaper on scene. The truck drove at the entrance next to the Astoria Hotel on the site, then parallel to the road in the festival grounds. Berlin media on scene saying the following. After the truck had driven onto the Christmas market, there was ghostly silence in the square. The people were herding in front of the stalls, holding each other in their arms, others clasping their hands in front of their faces, others crying and hugging each other. Quoting now, "There were dead and injured people," a policeman shouted at passerby who rushed for the Christmas market. The site was secured with a red and white fluttering tape. The bus is a dark 7.5-ton truck. It stood on the Budapest Road near the right rear of the Citizens Doe. The lane of police examined the driver's cab, but the driver has apparently escaped from this truck and is on the run, as Fox reports this hour. More out of Berlin as it comes in.
Was murdered. I would like to give my sincere condolences to the family and friends of our comrade. I would like to request the Russian Foreign Ministry to award Mr. Karlov post-mortem and offer its proposals for making a memorial for him. He was killed while performing his duties. This was a brilliant diplomat who was widely respected in the country where he was posted. He was in good standing with the government of Turkey and with other political groups in that country. He was respected. Ambassador Karlov was a very good-hearted person. I knew him personally, so I'm not speaking from hearsay. And last autumn, during my visit to Turkey, Ambassador Karlov accompanied me all the time. This murder is clearly a provocation aimed at undermining the improvement and the normalization of the Russian-Turkish relations, as well as at undermining the peace process in Syria promoted by Russia, Turkey, Iran, and other countries interested in settling this conflict in Syria. The only response we should offer to this murder is stepping up our fight against terror, and the criminals will feel the heat. The Russian Investigative Committee has already launched an investigation into this killing. It's been tasked with forming a working group which will have to fly to Ankara and join its Turkish colleagues in jointly investigating this murder. This is something we agreed on in my telephone conversation with the Turkish president just now. We have to know who organized the killing, who gave orders to the assassin. We need to strengthen security at Russian diplomatic missions at Turkey's diplomatic missions in Russia. We also need to receive guarantees from Turkey that Russian diplomatic missions in Turkey will also enjoy strengthened security in compliance with the Convention on Diplomatic Relations. And I would like to request you to offer your proposals for strengthening the security of Russian diplomatic missions abroad.
According to diplomatic sources and officials on Friday, the European Union will extend its main economic sanctions on Russia over the conflict in Ukraine by 6 months. The sanctions restrict access to international financing, while also curbing defense and energy cooperation with Russia, which in March of 2014 annexed the Black Sea Peninsula of Crimea from Kiev and went on to support a rebellion in eastern Ukraine. Nearly 10,000 lives have been claimed by the still simmering conflict in Ukraine's industrial east. The sources claim that the decision to extend the sanctions will be discussed next week at a joint summit in Brussels. The formal procedure should conclude around December 20th.
Now, the Ukrainian military says that pro-Russia fighters have killed 5 of its troops and wounded 6 others in the eastern city of Debaltseve. The army said that the fighting lasted for 2 hours and involved artillery and large-caliber grenade launchers. Ukrainian military officials also said that 20 pro-Russia fighters were killed and 30 others injured in the fighting as well. Now, the clashes erupted over the control of the strategic city of Debaltseve. Ukraine's government troops and pro-Russia forces have been engaged in a bloody conflict over the past 2 years, which has claimed some 10,000 lives so far. Now, Mr. Rustam Safronov, political analyst, is joining us out of Washington. Hello, sir, and thanks for joining us on Press TV's Top 5. Now, sir, so the Minsk Accord, which was hashed out on paper, has had little effect in practice on the ground. Why is it so difficult for us to put an end to this conflict in eastern Ukraine?
I think partially because conflict is not settled conceptually, because both sides dissatisfied with that agreement. They just looked at it as some way of temporarily stop a bloodshed. But in reality, conflict could be resolved and a ceaseful agreement could be signed, peaceful agreement could be signed only when you have a compromise. For that, you have to have some kind of defined military outcome, and it didn't happen. So both sides didn't use the potential yet militarily, didn't use their anger and desire for revenge. So I think that's what is fueling that conflict. And I don't think anybody from outside could really resolve it. That's supposed to grow within. Russia or Europe could only influence that, try to restrain that sides of the conflict. The problem is, it's not like whatever some parties in the West thinking it's just fueled from outside. It's have a internal conflict. It is a civil war element. That's why it's not going to stop. So before a political solution will be really found inside, will satisfy both sides in compromising way.
And can we attach responsibility, or can we say there are certain factions or states that are involved in this that are uncompromising? I mean, with respect to what's happening in the volatile East, is it Ukraine? I mean, is it Kiev, the West? Is it Moscow? Or is it the opposition there in the East?
So obviously, nationalist regime in Kiev would like to get the territory back and to put under their control, and they use the West. They use the help of the West, but and they demand basically Russia to get out of that and not to help rebels, rebellion republics. So the truth of the matter, Russia cannot do that. Otherwise, it will lead to the political crisis in Russia itself. If Russia betrayed, rebelled the Russian population in Ukraine, yes, Russia do support that, obviously politically and partially, probably militarily. So not letting Ukrainian troops to crush the republics. So and Obama's administration used it till very last moment as a tool against Russia to destabilize Russia and to put pressure to Western Europe, to the Europe in the issue of sanctions against Russia. So let's see what new American administration will do regarding to that area. So regime in Kiev would have to change a little bit of at least attitude to become a little more compromising and realize it is not possible to crush these republics militarily. So only in this case, any movement ahead is possible in reaching a peaceful solution.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Rustam Safronov, for your valuable input, political analyst, joining us out of Washington.
North Korea may have doubled its number of nuclear weapons in just the last year and a half. That's according to a report from the Institute for Science and International Security in Washington. The London Daily Mirror reports the group estimates that Kim Jong-un could have added 6 or more weapons by expanding his country's nuclear production. North Korea promised in 2013 to start up all of its nuclear facilities again and said last month that it will build up its nuclear weapons capability.
Pride School Atlanta has created a haven for LGBTQ identifying students. The school focuses on LGBT community issues. Kristen Sasalovitz, the school's transgender co-founder and director, stated, "They don't have to fight for the right to exist here." The school's creation comes at a perfect time when transgender bathroom rights are still up for debate in the United States. The LGBTQ community is apprehensive of what President-elect Donald Trump will do when he enters office in 2017. So it's good that places like Pride School Atlanta exist.
This man doesn't wear horns all the time, but when he does, people stare. And when he legally changed his name to Phelan Moonsong to reflect his pagan beliefs, he had trouble getting a photo ID. He says he was rejected by the state of Maine for wanting to wear horns in his picture, a headdress he considers religious wear. According to Moonsong, the BMV said he needed to explain himself to the Secretary of State. But when Moonsong called to follow up on his explanation, he found out his request had been rejected. Moonsong contacted the Maine Civil Liberties Union, and the next time he went to the BMV, the clerk took his photo. The state says it didn't originally know the horns had religious significance. Moonsong says they did. Either way, he received his new ID last week. And no matter what people think of his spiritual antennae, he'll continue to use them as a way to clarify his beliefs. For InsideEdition.com, I'm Kelly Nealon.
A local village has a fight on its hands over a long-standing nativity scene.
It's been set up on village property in St. Bernard every year for decades, but as Anjanette Levy shows us tonight, the village has been told it has to go.
On the front lawn of the St. Bernard Village Hall, baby Jesus is snug in his manger, surrounded by animals and the 3 wise men.
And we had a big turnout Saturday night and got so many compliments on it, and people wait for this time of year to come out and celebrate this tradition together.
But the tradition is raising eyebrows this year. The village received this letter from the Wisconsin-based Freedom from Religion Foundation, saying the nativity scene violates the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment.
It's not the government's place to be promoting any one religion over another, and that's exactly what an exclusively Christian nativity scene on government property does.
Sam Grover says his organization received a complaint from the Tri-State Freethinkers. Grover says his group doesn't have a problem with the Christmas tree or the letters to Santa. Baby Jesus and the others are the issue.
The city is allowed to celebrate Christmas as a secular holiday, but they cannot celebrate the religious aspects of that holiday by having a nativity scene.
But Mayor John Estep doesn't see the nativity scene as endorsing one religion over another. So for now, it's going to stay.
I don't have any plans on calling our service department and say, take this down tonight, we're going to run, we're doing something wrong. I'd like to research it more thoroughly and do what we can to preserve this tradition.
Mayor Estep says he is going to talk with the village's attorney about what they should do moving forward. And he believes if he does take the nativity scene down, the people here in the village will be incredibly upset. Meanwhile, the Freedom from Religion Foundation says the nativity scene would just be fine. It could stay as long as other groups were allowed to bring their displays and post them here at Village Hall as well. Reporting live from St. Bernard, Anjanette Levy, Local 12 News.
Anjanette, thanks very much. You may recall the same foundation sued Franklin County, Indiana over a nativity scene at the courthouse there. The lawsuit was settled after the county agreed to allow a satanic display.